Renacita is definitely the most beautiful sort of like visuals you can find right now in a 3D anime collector gacha game, I think, personally. It was very good in introducing this whole different world to the player. All right, we just finished Renacita, all the story. We finished Act 1, 2, 3, and the prologue, obviously. And maybe, I guess, the afterword. I think the afterword is part of Act 3. Act 3 was pretty big. I think it was a little too long. It probably, like, could have said to be cut up into a different segment, maybe? I don't know. But either way, what are my thoughts? I'll give the spoiler-free type of version first. How do I feel about this patch? In terms of its story, because, to be honest, we haven't done too much exploring, right? We haven't done too much of interacting with the world and interacting with all the enemies and like all the little mini stages or puzzles. It was very streamlined, the story. Okay, so what did I think of the Renacita story? I think the Renacita story was very good. Very, very good from start to finish. I would say if there is a low point, it would be Act 2. Okay? But the way Act 1 and the prologue started, I need to highlight this. It felt like the introduction to almost like a AAA game. It felt like a very good streamlined introduction to a whole different kind of world, the country that is Renacita, and as well their culture, their history, right? With talking with Phoebe. It was very good in introducing this whole different world to the player. And the rules, the culture, everything, and all the characters as well. The characters felt very good in terms of they felt like they were alive. Like they had a life outside of just being Rover's tour guide, in the case of Zanny, or they had a context in the greater part of things, like when you meet Brant within the prologue of Renacita, right? It sets the backdrop, it sets the stage very, very well. And so Act 1 and prologue were very good in terms of just making sure everything, introducing everyone, all the key characters, as well as creating that intrigue in the plot and setting up what is to come. So I'm not going to go too much into the details of the story following that. What I will say is that Renacita is definitely the most beautiful visuals you can find right now in a 3D anime collector gacha game, I think, personally. I might be cooked for that. I don't know, because I know a lot of people who watch me are Genshin fans. But I honestly do think that the graphical fidelity, the details, the landmarks, let's just say the landmarks, right? They're very, very good in this world. And especially the city, the main city of Renacita, the color palette, the multiple levels of elevation, how filled everything feels in terms of the people in that world, as well as all the props. It felt very good. Jinzhou, by comparison, felt very flat, right? It felt like there was a flat piece of land. There was an upper tier that only like had like a small part of it, and then there was a higher tier, right, where you had like the big building, right, where Jinshi is in. It was really just not very, it didn't feel like a city. It didn't feel like it was alive. Likewise, nothing in Mount Firmament, nothing in Black Shores ever felt as alive as the city of Renacita, right? Renacita definitely takes the cake in terms of like just any kind of city I've seen in these kind of open world 3D gacha games. So yeah, there's that. The music, very, very good. Music is great. I do think there are a lot of segments, and this is like Wua's characteristic weakness, I will say, that there are some times where the music either doesn't fit or there's like too much dead air between them switching tracks or I guess repeating the track. So there are times where it just gets awkwardly silent. And that is a weakness that I think Wua has had since 1.0, and it does happen occasionally here as well. Besides that, exploring this this world, the arena city, is very fun. The bear hopping sort of interactables in the world where you turn into a bear and hop onto a roof. The manta rays that you could use to reset your flight and bring you up higher in elevation. Flying, very fun. Picking up the cat's paws on the ground to extend your sprint and go really fast and transform into a cat if you attack out of it. Really, really cool stuff. It makes exploration fun on the ground. It makes exploration fun in the air. It is very, very good. And I was worried. I was worried because when you start introducing flight, when you introduce things that sort of mitigate or skip over parts of like traveling, I was worried that having flight in the game would make it so you don't want to travel on the ground. But that is furthest from the truth. The cat's paws pickups and the bear hopping, those are actually really fun segments or fun things that you could do to interact with the world and see things from a different perspective. So it's really good. It's really, really good. Besides that, we got visuals, we got music, we got gameplay exploration. I'm not going to really talk too much about the gameplay in terms of combat. The honest to God truth is I'm a casual. I'm a filthy casual. I don't really care too much about that. I would love to get into that, but I have to build my characters more before I feel like comfortable diving into that. Okay. From what I can tell, the game feels fun, feels fine. It feels like Wuthering Waves. Nothing feels too different from that, but I don't really have a very good perspective on it. Besides that, gameplay, combat, gameplay exploration, visuals, music, story that's not spoilery. We talked about it, right? The two more points that I do want to talk about definitely would be sort of like the key character of this story. Definitely Carlotta. Carlotta is such a great character is leagues above pretty much anyone else Wuthering Waves has released thus far. When you compare her to Shorekeeper, when you compare her to Jinshi, when you compare her to Yang Yang or Chisha, right? What you have over them is someone that is smart, intelligent, has very good, well-written like lines, a very good voice actress as well in Jennifer. I think her name's Jennifer English. She does Shadowheart in Baldur's Gate 3. And as well, you have a character that doesn't like sell it or like lay it on too thick. How I look at Wuthering Waves story, at least now, my expectations of it, it's kind of in line with like how I would look at I guess kind of like a James Bond movie, right? In that the main character, Rover, is a very skilled, very strong, right? Very influential, very attractive, obviously, because all the characters really like him. And so it really is like, in terms of like, hey, this is a chapter, which is Renacita. This is a chapter on the Black Shores. This is a chapter following Jinshi, right? It really is set up to be like, there's a strong main character, and then there's the heroine, who is more or less like the love interest. And in the case of Carlotta, I feel like Carlotta has definitely been, out of all the love interests that have been introduced to or like paired with Rover so far, has been the most reserved, has been the most respectful of Rover and of Rover's place in the world, Rover's influence and power, as opposed to just wanting to like attach her face to his crotch. I think definitely Carlotta gives a lot of credence and respect to like Rover's role in this world, as opposed to just wanting to glaze him 24/7. For sure, though, eventually you do have the dance scene, right? And for sure, she is the love interest, and she is very, how do you say it? Yeah, no, she is the love interest. She is reciprocating like a lot of how would you say it? Admiration for Rover, but it doesn't ever feel like overblown. It doesn't feel like she ever lays it on too thick. Where in the case of like Shorekeeper, it's like, you're the only one. We've been together forever, right? It's you and me, Rover, from the very beginning, way back when, right? I love you, Rover, and like, it's just everything about that felt incredibly cheesy. It felt like it came out of nowhere, even though she keeps telling you it was from before, right? It didn't feel earned. It didn't feel deserved. It felt very bad. This story does not do that. Carlotta is the relationship that kind of builds between her and Rover is built in a very meaningful, in a very step by step, in a very fulfilling way, in my opinion. It was done very tastefully. Yeah, Shorekeeper was incredibly forced. I feel like Jin Shi is the most comparable to Carlotta. Granted, I don't remember too much of their relationship because I kind of like remove Rover from that story. And I don't do that for this one, right? This one, I feel like Rover's role in this story, it feels still like, oh, he's the main character, obviously, right? But at the end of the day, it is a lot less focused than in the previous stories, okay? It is a lot less focused because inherently you have all these factions, you have all these families, you have the Montanelli, right? The Montanelli family, the Phasalia, you have the bank, the Aravado bank, I think. You have the Fools. You have, I mean, these different factions, these different sort of, oh, the Order. How could I forget the Order? These different factions kind of vying for power, vying for strength, introduces strong characters and kind of take the spotlight away from Rover or divide it evenly more amongst them. And so they take all that sort of pressure away from it. And I definitely think they did a very good job in making a more character-centric story as opposed to a story that is just focused on Rover and like the backdrop around him. Right. Carlotta as a heroine is great. I feel like moving forward, when you criticize Wuthering Waves' story, you do kind of have to go into it with that mindset, go into it with this sort of framework in mind, in that Rover is the main hero, obviously, and there is going to be a heroine, and there is going to be a bigger plot that they sort of interact and involve with. And I definitely think Carlotta, who doesn't even appear that much in Act 1 and Prologue, coming more into play in Act 2, she was built up. She was hyped in Act 1 and Prologue very well. She was built up the relationship with Rover very well in Act 2, right? Very, very good. Very great character. So I guess we can talk a little bit about spoilers. I don't really know if I have a lot to talk about here. Maybe like low points of the story or things that I didn't really like. There was one part in, I think, Act 3 where Carlotta kind of glosses over this detail of like, oh, her uncle, Uncle Capello got freed and her grandfather basically saved him, and it's like, oh, everything's good, right? When that was kind of like the big thing that happened at the end of Act 2 was that Carlotta is supposed to kind of betray Rover, but instead just like separates them from the Order, and you know, Rover's able to kind of escape. I felt like that part was not very executed well. Whether it's like Carlotta separating the Order from Rover, Carlotta escaping the Order, or Carlotta's uncle being saved and also escaping the Order. That part felt a little glossed over. That felt a little kind of like explained away very quickly. It didn't feel very good, I'll be honest, right? So that was definitely a not great part of the story. Besides that, I do want to talk about sort of the main themes about the story and what I really liked about it, right? I definitely think Act 3 was very good. It would be very close to Act 1 Prologue. If not, I won't say it's better, but it's very, very close. And Act 3 definitely does sell the entire Rina Sita story, for sure. Because Act 3 is when you meet the Fools for, like, in a more detailed way, right? You talk to the Fools, you learn what they're all about, you know that they were sent on pilgrimage. Basically, they were kind of like maybe you could say the misfits, or just the people that didn't fit into this neat society that the order has constructed for Rinascita, right? So they get banished, they get sent away, and what do they find, right? They find faith in a god or a religion that was also abandoned and discarded by the order, right? And their sort of wanting and willingness to fight, not just for something they believe in, but for their sort of like right to live, their right to have a story, to have a narrative, to be someone instead of something that was discarded, instead of something that was just thrown away, right? An afterthought. I thought it has parallels to, real world things. I think it's really, a good theme to explore. It was a great story for sure. And I really, really like that they did that. The fools are cool, right? The fools are cool. I definitely like that. Besides the fools, let me try and think. That was definitely like a big good part that I really enjoyed. In terms of like the key characters, the drip characters, the resonators, I would say Phoebe is probably the weakest, right? Just to kind of segue a little bit, or step aside. Phoebe was probably the weakest. Even though I really like Phoebe's visual design, I think she's like a really like great, cute looking character. She has a good aesthetic. I think she was probably the weakest performance. She didn't really do that much. She kind of turned on her beliefs of being an acolyte of the order pretty quickly, I would say. And I also didn't really vibe with the voice work that much. I would say she's probably the weakest. The last thing I wanted to talk about, the very last thing I want to talk about, and I'm going to get a lot of flack for this take, okay? I feel like I'm going to get a lot of flack for this take. But the scene where Carlotta basically tells Rover everything that she believes in and what the citizens of Rinascita were going through and why she and the Montellis like fight for what they believe in, essentially in freedom, in open markets, in the people kind of dictating their lives for themselves, why she fights for that. Every detail, all the lines that were written there, not only were they delivered beautifully, they were written very, very well. And I think that scene is probably one of the coolest scenes I've seen in gacha gaming, honestly. I think it was really, really good to kind of like put a cap on all of Carlotta's ideals and why she is what she fights for, right? What she believes in. I think it was well delivered. I think it was very well written, and I really fuck with that scene a lot. I really do. And like I kind of want to draw a comparison, okay, to something like Firefly's scene in like the beginning or act 1 of Penacony. I feel like Firefly, when she did that scene, it talks a lot about like her and kind of like what she deals with, right? And it's not, I feel like she doesn't really say that much of substance. Whereas like what Carlotta kind of talks about and goes into, right? Which is the, there was a really cool idea that she was talking about, like how order and this religion, this faith, right? The faith in the order was very useful in the beginning to unify everyone in Rinascita, because Rinascita is a sort of like a melting pot or a mix of different cultures, different people, right? This faith, this religion was great to kind of band the people together, unite them under a single banner, under a single identity. But over time, this play that she said, this play was too long drawn out. Everyone kind of gets set in their roles, and they maintain this tradition for the sake of maintaining the tradition, as opposed to, utilizing or like it's outstayed its welcome, right? It's no longer that useful to them as it was before. Now it stifles them, it stops them from growing, and it prevents them from being who they really are, it freely expressing themselves. And this whole sort of thought, this whole kind of illustration that Carlotta paints, this picture, it's done so well. I feel like if someone were to not like click the skip button and to actually like listen to the words that she says, they would be able to pick it up. They would be able to understand it. It would sound very powerful if you just can kind of immerse yourself into like what they're feeling. And I definitely think that that scene was just great. It was good. Those are my thoughts of Rinasida in a nutshell. Overall, I will say, like, I gave Zenless Zone Zero Chapter 5 probably an 8.5 out of 10. I would go so far as to say this is a 9 out of 10. 9 out of 10. It has a few, like, pitfalls here and there, but it's overall just a very good, well put together, great relaunch, great narrative, great story, delivered beautifully. They didn't skimp out on the details. They gave good vocal direction for pretty much everyone. Couple here and there, like, I guess, like, you would say weak points here and there, but overall, just a very, very good experience. And to anyone that dropped Wuthering Waves, maybe because for lack of character depth, lack of story, right, lack of a narrative that felt compelling to play, I definitely think you should give this game another shot. Not only is it a lot more fun with the exploration mechanics, but the story and the characters are very well written this time around. So that's my thoughts. My name is Rednu. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one.